CEOs of state corporations, the private sector, non-state actor representatives, our development partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Last week, His Excellency President William Ruto made a call to Kenyans to start together and join hands in overcoming what is destined to become one of the most devastating environmental challenges to be experienced in our country. As was noted, the continued torrential rains have led to instances of flooding, landslides, road closures, and the loss of lives and property across the country. The severe weather conditions have impacted over 227,000 people, caused 228 fatalities, injured 164 people, displaced 42,526 households, and damaged infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and waterways. Permit me to request us to rise to our feet and observe a minute's silence in honor and in remembrance of the many lives that have been lost as a result of the devastating floods, landslides, and other calamities occasioned by the harsh rainfall. Thank you. You may take your seats. In their memory, we have come together to commit to joining His Excellency, the President's call to action to continue being our brothers' keepers. Like in all previous times of challenge and crisis, the Kenyan spirit of compassion and fortitude in times of adversity has always come through, embodying the true meaning of Harambee. Despite the overwhelming impact of recent events and the pain and agony of families who have lost loved ones, homes, and livelihoods, we have observed that our humanity and the natural desire to extend a hand of generosity to our brothers and sisters has not been diminished. I therefore thank our first responders who have been on the ground, undertaking search and rescue services, providing food and other humanitarian support, tracing and uniting families, and most importantly, offering psychosocial support across affected areas. I also thank you for heeding to our call today and joining us in framing an even more elaborate structure of aid to families and communities whose lives have been turned upside down by the calamities of the last few weeks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the government of Kenya has made significant strides in mitigating the impacts of the flooding and other disaster actions across the country. Since our last engagement, we have made efforts to mitigate loss of lives, especially around dams and swollen river basins. The opening of schools has been deferred until further notice, and humanitarian and other assistance has been accorded on priority basis to particular affected sites across the country. Road closures to facilitate infrastructure repair to bridges, roads, and railways have been given priority. Our disciplined forces have been deployed across the country to back up the first responder teams and clear roads and waterways. However, even with the extensive government-led programs at both national and county level, we appreciate the need to receive and coordinate additional support for greater effectiveness. In this regard, we are calling on our development partners, the private sector, non-state actors, and individual well-wishers to contribute in cash and in kind to the noble efforts to support those most affected by the floods, landslides, and other related challenges. Last week, the National Disaster Response Steering Committee technical team identified and categorized the most urgent areas requiring expedited support. These include food assistance to affected families, non-food items, water treatment to mitigate the risk of waterborne disease outbreak, emergency housing solutions, essential medical commodities, and repair of critical infrastructure. We see an opportunity to jointly coordinate extended support to these areas through a joint-up action involving government, development partners, the private sector, non-state actors, and individual well-wishers. This whole of society approach will allow us to respond rapidly and strategically to where the needs are greatest, allow the greatest level of flexibility to deliver timely and effective coordinated assistance to the most vulnerable families, and facilitate a more impactful outcome of chosen interventions. In this regard, we invite the use of the following architecture. 1, development partners with existing financial support arrangements with the government of Kenya and who are in a position to make requisite program changes to support flood mitigation efforts are to engage through the National Treasury with due information to the National Disaster Operational Center Secretariat on the toll-free emergency contact, which is 0800-721-571, and the International Development Partnership Coordination Unit in the Office of the Deputy President for information and coordination purposes. 2, all other private sector and individual well-wishers wishing to make cash donations may liaise with the National Drought Response Team led by Mr. Peter Ndegwa, the Chief Executive Officer of Safaricom Limited, whose membership and mandate has now been expanded to support the flood mitigation actions, and will gazette that expansion of mandate and renewal of their term tomorrow. Number 3, the drought response team has an existing infrastructure in aiding coordinating private sector and individual well-wisher cash donations. The private sector and well-wishers are therefore invited to send cash donations to the National Drought Mitigation Appeal Fund, and we shall be releasing the account details, one in foreign currency, the other one in Kenya shillings. Number 4, any development partner, private sector, and individual well-wishers with in-kind donations, including food and non-food items, care packages, medical packs, are invited to deliver them to the National Disaster Operations Center at Nyayo House, Nairobi, and also available on toll-free emergency contact 0800-721-571. The same will be centrally warehoused at designated Kenya Defense Forces and National Youth Service and the Kenya Red Cross warehouses for subsequent distribution through established partnerships in a coordinated manner. Where the private sector individual well-wishers intend to undertake distribution directly to the victims on the ground, they are to communicate the information on the nature, quantity, and quality of in-kind support intended to be distributed, the intended area, site of support, intended date of distribution, and intended number of recipient households or persons to the National Disaster Operations Center Secretariat for Information and Coordination. The purpose of that is to cure what is happening today. Many people who want help are going to one destination, and what is happening now, Mathare, because of proximity, is the destination of choice. And it's a good thing, but we are giving supplies to one area and oversaturating the support to the detriment of other areas. So it will be appropriate, all those who want to help, if they liaise with our secretariat at Nyayo House so that we coordinate. And we can also marshal resources together for equitable distribution across the country. The National Disaster Operations Center team shall guide such individuals and private sector organizations on the ongoing on-the-ground security arrangements, local national government administration liaison, and appropriate dates for distribution in order to ensure good order, security, and fair and equitable distribution across the various victim sites. Where a private sector organization or individual wishes to channel support directly to a county government, they are to similarly provide information on the nature, quantity, and quality of in-kind support intended to be distributed, the intended area or site of support, the intended date of distribution, the intended number of recipient households and persons to the National Disaster Operations Center Secretariat for information and guidance. Distribution of in-kind support should only be undertaken with the presence and coordination of the relevant county commissioners or their designated representatives. Donations received will be recorded and published on the National Disaster Operations Center and the Ministry of Interior and National Administration websites and updated on a weekly basis. The Office of the Auditor General will be tasked to ensure not only the accountability and transparency of fund utilization, but also assurance of the integrity of adopted processes of food and non-food distribution actions. A comprehensive report will be provided on the use of donations received upon the final audit. The Inspector General of Police and the National Government Administrative Officers are directed to secure enforcement of this protocol and further communicate to the National Disaster Operations Center Secretariat details and information to interested local community actors in coordinating distribution efforts. We invite all donors and well-wishers and sponsors to adopt this approach so as to secure the coordination, consolidation, demarcation, and distribution of donations to vulnerable populations across the country based on the needs map already developed in a transparent and accountable manner, while also making a visible impact to the communities. We further call on county governments to facilitate the allocation of emergency funds to support the disaster mitigation actions as anticipated in the Public Finance Management Act, whereas the minimum requirement is for an allocation not exceeding 2% of the total government revenue as shown in audited financial statements for the previous financial year. We call on counties to dig even deeper and facilitate any additional amounts necessary to save the lives and livelihoods of our people. As of this morning, we have directed the National Treasury to give priority while disbursing funds to those counties that are very affected, and that is already being done. In conclusion, I thank all Kenyans and other actors of goodwill for their prayers, support, and sponsorship already offered. We invite any other additional facilitation that may be available to be channeled through the above structure in a manner that will deliver effective and impactful support. I reiterate the message of His Excellency, the President William Ruto, during his address last week, that in the face of daunting challenges, immense threats, and unprecedented hazards, our nation has never failed. I'm confident that we shall live up to the true spirit of Harambee and to the restoration of the dignity to those most affected. Asanteni sana.